If you're looking to learn more about the BC craft brewing scene, this is the show for you. Coming up today, we'll talk to Jack Bensley, who's the brewmaster from Main Street Brewing. He also has some history going back to 2008. We can talk about where the industry came from, where it's at today as well. We'll take you to Steel Toed Brewing Company and do a little food and beer pairing. We'll introduce you to beer ice cream. Yeah, you heard me, beer ice cream. And we'll talk to our good buddy Jay Schreiber, Mr. Smarty Pints, about cans versus bottles. This is BC Brew on Tap. Welcome to BC Brew on Tap from Mahoney & Sons at Canada Place. We're talking about the BC beer scene. Jack Bensley has been in the BC beer scene for about a dozen so years. Close enough, yeah. But before I talk about that, Jack, you're now with Main Street Brewing. I was surprised to learn that you actually came from the world of education.
It's a little scary, isn't it? Yeah.
How did you go from teaching to brewing?
They really frown on drinking on the job when you're a teacher. I'd started homebrewing when I was working on my degree, so living in Victoria, lots of good beer at the time, no brew pubs over this side so much, but making my own beer because I'd gone to school at a relatively young age and wasn't legally allowed to buy it at the time. And yeah, ended up going into the world of teaching physics, math, and had an early midlife crisis, knew that I was in love with beer and my home brewing passion was getting a little out of hand, and started doing some schooling towards it and made the switch.
Now, when you started, and you started brewing, is it 08?
2008, yep.
2008, okay, and you were with Russell Brewing Company.
That's correct, yeah.
So it's even hard to imagine, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it's almost like an eon in terms of like the beer community. What was the beer scene in BC like in 2008?
Yeah, it's a totally different world. When you try and describe to someone not being able to go and fill a growler anywhere, a tasting lounge is not a thing at the time. I drank Russell Cream Ale when I was in my formative beer drinking years, and that's kind of what steered me towards choosing them when I started. And honestly, there wasn't a lot of other choices kicking around as far as local beer. R&B had been around for a while, Storm had been around for a while, Russell had been around for a while, but in the Lower Mainland, there's nothing else.
What do you think the catalyst was? Because it seemed to me, if I remember my math, it was around 2010, and I don't think it tied in with the Olympics by any means, but around 2010, it just, someone like pulled the pin on the grenade and just went boom. Like what do you think led up to that?
The key was definitely rule changes, law changes, right? We knew that they were coming and that there was a push towards that, and we were building while those laws were still sort of coming into effect at Main Street. So being able to sell beer on site and have people come to you, sit down, drink your beer, and then walk away with a growler, that's sort of a business model that was just being created out of nowhere, and we knew what that was gonna change.
So there was a lot of, I guess, for lack of a better term, big corporate beers, or the two big corporate beer companies, if you will. Was it an easy sell? Like even in 2008, was it easy to turn people on to something that wasn't one of the big guys?
There was definitely desire from whatever gets people started on that craft beer train, whether it's traveling. You've been to England and tasted beer the way that it should taste. You've traveled to Germany or whatever. There's definitely that need for, as the food started to change in Vancouver as well, you saw people starting to upscale their wine choices, their beer choices, and everything kind of went hand in hand.
So cut to 2017, you're now almost 4 years in at Main Street Brewing, which kind of surprises me because I thought you guys have been around a lot longer than that, which I guess speaks to just how many beer companies have sprung up in the last couple of years.
Absolutely, yeah. And it does feel like a lot longer, not that it's been a trial or anything like that. It's actually our third anniversary, 4 years since we started building it, so third anniversary is coming up in about a month.
And you happen to have a very historic location, which is actually part of that area known as Brewery Creek. I guess the brewery or the creek actually ran sort of around where you're located today, is that
Right
correct?
down Scotia Street, which is, we're on the corner of Scotia and East 7th. Yeah, we're the only brewery in an industrial heritage building that was once part of a brewery. So, back in the day, the early 1900s, there was 6 big breweries in Vancouver, one of which was Vancouver Brewing Company. It would have been that whole block that we're on at one point. We have some pretty amazing photos of horse-drawn beer deliveries and guys with shotguns in the front seat.
I was going to say, every time I go into Main Street Brewing, there's always a part of me that kind of looks up to the ceilings and thinks of the heritage and what it must have been like back in those days, because as advanced as brewing is today, you got to wonder, like, what would it be like to brew beer back in the 1900s in that kind of facility? Like, you literally did everything by hand. There was no automation whatsoever.
Absolutely, yeah, and trying to control things and come up with consistency like we have now, I can't imagine. It's pretty brave guys.
What are you brewing at Main Street? I mean, you've got something that's I know this is flying off the shelves.
Yeah,
What tell us about
yeah,
it.
trying to keep up with that. Yeah, we've been in 6-pack cans for quite a while now, and we've just added some new SKUs on that front. But yeah, this Naked Fox IPA, trying to keep that in stock in cans has been difficult for the last little while. And we've added what I think is the first kettle sour that's gone into 6-pack cans in BC. So we've got a beer called Fruit Bomb, which is it's an interesting little beer.
In order for you to brew it, Jack, do you have to like it personally, or does it matter to you?
That's kind of the way I work. I make things that I want to drink. I'm selfish that way.
So I'm not yet in the sour equation. I've tried them. They're not my thing, and maybe they'll grow on me, maybe they won't. I liken it to, I like vegetables, but I don't like cauliflower. There's certain vegetables I do not like.
And within that sour regime, there's such a wide expanse of types of sour beer, and that's what you've got to wrap your head around. I mean, when I try and describe this beer to people, I describe it as, we jokingly were calling it Deli Sank when we first started making it, because it tastes like fruit juice. It tastes like you're drinking Five Alive almost. There's no hops in the actual boil portion of the brew. It's all whirlpooled in at the end. So all you're getting is flavor and aroma of all of the fruitiest hops you can think of, with that little bit of tartness at a low ABV, 4% alcohol, and you can crush it.
We've been doing the show a long time, and I've been waiting to have you on the show. Pleasure, Jack. Thank you so
sir.
much. Jack Bensley, the brewmaster from Main Street Brewing. This is BC Brew on Tap on Shaw TV.
Host hair services for Joe Leary and BC Brew on Tap, provided by Bailey Murphy of Avant Garde Hair Studio in Yaletown at 1075 Mainland Street. For a list of services, call 604-688-1986 or online avantgardehair.com. Location services for BC Brew on Tap, provided by Mahoney & Sons at Canada Place. For a list of locations, visit mahoneyandSons.com.
Welcome back to BC Brew on Tap on Shaw TV. We like to show you just how adaptable and how practical it is to pair beer with virtually any food under the sun. Richard Goodine is the Chief Operating Officer of Steel Toed Brewing Company. We're here in this beautiful facility at 2nd of Quebec. Nice to see you as always, sir.
Nice to see you always.
Tell us about Steel Toed. It's one of the relatively newer players in the beer family, as virtually so many are in BC. When did this concept come along?
About 3 years ago, the place was completely renovated, and the brewery opened with the idea being, we want to make great beer, we want to offer a great restaurant setting, and obviously throw in some other things that draw people down because we are in the heart of the community.
Now, this was, for those that know Vancouver's area as well, this was the Opsal Steel Building, which was quite this behemoth that took over this block. I'm amazed at what you've been able to do with this. But more importantly, when did the concept, how far back did the idea of this becoming a brewery ruminate? Like, who were the founders of this?
Well, a group of owners that have been friends and in some cases drinking buddies for years decided we should have a brewery and a great restaurant. They live in the community, so it started probably about 10 years ago, and the brewmaster, who's one of the owner's sons, started brewing about that time, and he's involved in making great beer.
Well, you know that I'm kind of a hophead. I go for your Kermode IPA. That's certainly one of the flagship beers here. What are you really known for? You do a variety of styles here.
Well, I think one of the things we're really known for is our beer is really drinkable. And for me personally, not being a hophead, I won't call you that to your face, I like to be able to sit and enjoy a beer. So drinkability would be our first thing. That said, you know, our Kermode is pretty hoppy and it's got a kick to it, but we try to keep it seasonal as well.
Okay, well, you've decided to go through the menu and you're going to pair some of your great beers with some of your food items. Obviously, we have a salad, but not just a salad. What do we have here?
Well, the thing is, I picked this particular item because a lot of times people think beer, wings, and nachos and all those other things, but you can do some lighter fare and you can have stuff that, as we go into summer, which is hopefully coming soon. This is a beautiful beet and goat cheese salad. It's got a nice vinaigrette to it and some pickled shallots. I thought the combination of the two would work really well with our blackberry sour. You got some 2 sour components, but you also have this good brightness that comes with the sour that really offsets those 2 flavors.
I have yet to really jump fully into the sour pool yet. I'm just kind of sticking a toe in the water, but where are you at when you see the customers? Are sours really taking over?
Sours take over, but they're a very specific customer. I think there's a lot of ladies that enjoy drinking sours, and it really depends on the day. The sun comes out, we sell more sour than we do on a day like today.
Okay, that's dish number 1. Well, Mr. Goodine, we've started with the sour beer. That's kind of an adventurous way to start the food and beer pairing, because normally I think you would kind of reserve that till later. So I'm curious to see what we've got for number 2. I smell garlic. What do I have in here?
You've got a Thai mussels with curry, certainly a fair bit of garlic, some nice cilantro in there. And one of the key elements of it, we add a little bit of lime. By adding the lime in, that citric acid helps to bring out the richness in the beer, actually.
Okay, so you've got a garlicky, citrusy combo here with some fish. What could you possibly pair that with beer-wise?
Well, you got a lot of aromatics. So aromatics, of course, entertain your olfactory senses. Hops, same thing. Being a hophead, you know that.
I thought you weren't going to call me a hophead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did.
It's okay.
So this has got a bit of richness to it because of the hops. The acidity helps to lift it up as well, and then it really almost gets floral as a beer.
So what exactly is this beer then?
This is our Kermode IPA.
That's the Kermode IPA. Okay, and again, is this pretty much a top seller for you?
It does extremely well, and like you, there are people who come in and they will not even try our other beer.
Well, I was going to ask you because I've really become a hophead, and I do admit that. Is this a hoppy town? Is Vancouver, or the greater Vancouver area, is that a real good hop consumption area for beers?
I don't think it's Oregon hoppy, but there's certainly a hoppy crowd, and those that are stay pretty committed to it.
Right. This looks great. Time to try it. This is dish number 2. Well, here for dish number 3 at Steel Toed Brewing Company at 2nd in Quebec. Richard, I'm seeing 2 very distinctly different food items here, yet you've got one beer to pair with them. So please explain. These are 2 disparate forms of food here. What do we have here?
Well, this is based on the fact that, a lot of times us geeks in the beer and wine community try to force our opinions on people. So I want to give people an option here. So this is a quail and pistachio terrine. It's got a really nice earthy character to it. You've got some really nice fig jam. So a lot of flavor. I wanted to have something that would stand up to it. But I also wanted to make sure that I celebrated that there's nothing wrong with being traditional. So this is our Equinox Pale Ale, and this is a classic fish and chips.
The Equinox Pale Ale, you find that the qualities in that beer, as different as these dishes are, it sort of works in conjunction from one to the other.
Fish and chips and pale ale always works.
Fish and chips works with anything.
And we use the pale ale in the batter, so that certainly helps with the flavor.
Yeah.
But I find this has got a pretty good bite to it for a pale ale. It's a little bit more hops, so a nice complexity to it. And there's a lot of complexity in this. And there's a fattiness that the cleanness of beer and the freshness sort of cuts through. So it's a chance you want to come in and be a little bit adventurous. But if you don't want to be adventurous, I'm not going to judge you. Go ahead and order your fish and chips.
Well, 3 very distinctly different styles of beer. Of course, we started with the sour. We went through the Kermode IPA, and of course your pale ale. And again, Steel Toed has a pretty good variety of beers. Are you always looking to experiment? Do you think you're going to get into more flavor profiles down the road?
We generally do seasonals throughout the year, but we also are constantly playing with different hops, and this is what we call a hop exchange pale ale. We do Mosaic hops and Equinox hops, and our brewmaster is constantly saying, what can we do a little bit differently this time? So our saisons will change, and our pale ale changes, and we do IPA, and sometimes we do a double IPA.
Don't you go changing, sir.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure. Richard Goodine, the COO from Steel Toed Brewing Company. More BC Brew on Tap on Shaw TV coming up.
Host hair services for Joe Leary and BC Brew on Tap provided by Bailey Murphy of Avant-Garde Hair Studio in Yaletown at 1075 Mainland Street. For a list of services, call 604-688-1986 or online avantgardehair.com. Location services for BC Brew on Tap provided by Mahoney & Sons at Canada Place. For a list of locations, visit mahoneyandSons.com.
Blair Casey of Rain or Shine Ice Cream on Cambie Street. Blair, we're always looking for new and inventive ways to work beer into our everyday lives. Why beer ice cream?
Because I love beer, especially craft
And you
beer.
love ice cream, and the two things go together. Okay, now you've been known for doing this for a while, but I understand you're going to show us today exactly how you put beer in ice cream.
For sure, yeah. My original dream was to do a craft brewery back in the day, but for various reasons ended up doing ice cream, and so I've always had a big attraction to beer and like drinking the odd one. So we've always done a beer ice cream. Today we're going to do one with Bomber Brewing. We've done a
brewer,
few
yes.
with them. This summer we did a passion fruit ale, which was a really nice summer ice cream and one of our more popular ones. Now that we're switching seasons to the fall and winter, we've got their new chocolate porter that we're going to try.
Okay, let's go nuts. Let's see what you do.
Perfect. So first thing you do, open the beer, and you can make sure the advantage of using a big bottle is you can drink a little of it, just to make sure you've got the right flavor profile. So yeah, this should make a really nice winter ice cream. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna reduce the beer. So that you want to pretty much do one standard bottle. We're making a home batch of ice cream here. I've somewhat free poured, but we're gonna reduce it anyway, so it should be okay. Now the reason we need to reduce it is to take some of the water out, but keep all the nice flavor and really bring out the malts in the ice cream. We're gonna put some brown sugar in at this stage as well. And that's gonna cook and reduce for about 15-20 minutes. You can also put molasses in if you'd like at this stage. I personally think on this porter, probably not necessary because the molasses is quite strong and could really dominate the beer flavor. And then you might end up with more of a molasses ice cream. So you just want to give it a good whisk when you're starting. Make sure you take some of the carbonation out. But this will now pretty much do its thing for a while, and you'll be able to smell it as it's going. You'll know it's reducing, and you'll really get that strong malt flavor. And with the darker beers, you're going to reduce it a bit more in the summer when we do IPAs or sours, which are also quite nice. We might not reduce it as much because we're going to put fruit in or cook it slightly differently. Like in the summer, we do a sour apricot ale. We've done that with Powell Street and Four Winds, and those ones have turned out really nice. But the dark beers are probably your best bet. The stouts and porters really go well with the rich dairy. Okay, so our beer and brown sugar has reduced enough, so we wanted to reduce it by about half. So now we're gonna take it off the heat. We're gonna add a little bit of sugar, just so it dissolves before we put in the cream and milk. It will dissolve much better under heat. Okay, so now that the beer's ready and you can really smell it, we're going to add our dairy. So here we've got 2 cups heavy cream and 1 cup of milk. 2% or skim or homo is fine. So we'll put all that in. And then we'll put a pinch of salt in. And then a little, let's say a teaspoon of vanilla. And now we're good to go. So there's our ice cream base. Okay, so now we're on to the final step where we're gonna put our ice cream base and the beer into our ice cream machine. So in here, we've got our container, and then this will churn it and add air to the ice cream. So just pour it in like that. So this should make about 1 liter or so. Put the lid on. And there we go. So that will churn away for probably about 50 minutes. Every machine's a little different. but you can certainly make good ice cream at home with good ingredients and any sort of homemade ice cream machine. Okay, well here we are. So the ice cream's pretty much done now in the machine, so it's time for extraction. So we'll stop the machine and then have a tub ready to go. What we really like doing, and is nice especially at home, is adding what we call an inclusion into your ice cream. So here I've made some brownies and we'll chop them up and then fold it into the ice cream, and it'll really add a nice touch. Obviously chocolate brownies will go well with the chocolate border. And they don't have to be perfect because you're gonna just fold it in as you go anyway. Okay. So we'll stop our machine here. So now we've got our ice cream. We'll pull out our whisk. This has been churning it and adding air to the dairy and the beer mix. So now we've got our finished product. So we'll take some brownie, take more of the ice cream. You just kind of do it in a few different layers. For our test batches, it certainly melts a little quicker.
So I guess, Blair, all that's left is the sampling. May I?
Here you go.
Yourself as well? It's
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Wow. So beer is a regular thing on the menu at Rain or Shine?
Definitely. We try to always have one of our seasonals be a beer-related flavor.
Wow, that works. More BC Brew on Tap coming up. Welcome back to BC Brew on Tap on Shaw TV from Mahoney and Sons at Canada Place. We always save the best for the last. Smarty Pints, Jay Schreiber.
How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
I've been pretty well.
Okay, so we're talking about different styles of beer and containers of beer. We're obviously talking
bottles and cans
versus bottles.
Bottles and cans.
Tall Boy versus
Bomber.
Bomber.
Well, and these are really just two examples. Really, I mean, it comes down to there's a variety of ways now in this booming craft beer industry that you can have canned products in various sizes. This is a 16 ounce, the 473 milliliter size. There's smaller cans, which are 12 ounce. They come in the 6-packs, and there's even larger cans called crowlers, which are 1 liter of beer.
Those are the fat boys.
Correct,
yeah,
correct.
Okay.
There's a few breweries that have started doing that. And we also have the bottles that have been coming out for, everybody knows beer in bottles, usually smaller, again, the 12 ounce sizes, the 30 milliliters for those of us in the metric system. And then there's the larger ones here, the 22 ounces, which are 650 milliliters also.
So for the beer bargain hunter out there,
sure.
Is there a distinction price point wise between buying, say, a Tall Boy can, because they usually come in 4s, do they not?
4-packs, correct,
okay.
yeah. 4-packs and 6-packs
versus
for the
6-packs. Okay, it's not the same equivalent of
it
beer.
It is the same volume, actually.
So four big guys versus 6 small guys.
Correct.
Same amount of beer.
Same amount of beer.
Okay.
What comes down to is perception. A lot of the time. I would say, if you're going to have a few beers for the night, you're going over to your friend's house, you got a house
Jay,
party.
you know me, I'm one and done, buddy.
You're one and done.
One and done.
Always.
That's it. Yeah.
Always plan a safe ride.
Right.
So if you have if you have a couple beers for the night, I'd go for the 4-pack or go for the 6-pack. It's better value for your buck. It's whenever you're at a house party situation or you're with somebody, you want to share a beer with somebody. When you go for the bottles, usually these are beers that you would share, more of a sipping kind of thing. You share a few ounces, more of an exotic product, higher end. However, a few people have liked this product because they get more volume of the beer that they like in one unit.
Is this the equivalent then of, again, if you go the traditional 12-pack of beer bottles?
Sure.
Is that like the equivalent of 2?
This is about two small cans of beer.
Two small cans
a little
of
less
beer.
than 2 small cans of beer. So a small can of beer is about 12 ounces. Yeah. This one is about 22. Sometimes with the higher fills, you get about 23, 24 ounces out.
When, in your estimation, did this all change around? Because I mean, every time you walk into like a government liquor store or a private liquor store today, you see like a vast selection of these.
Yeah.
When did that sort of industry start to blossom?
I started seeing this about 3-4 years ago when the whole industry, the rules started changing. Smaller craft breweries in micro communities around BC and as well in Vancouver and large cities, that they started putting beer into bottles of this size. Largely for a number of reasons. One, it's easier to package this, it's easier to ship and easier to sell. It's also better margins for the brewery to make a packaged product of this size.
Okay, one quick final question.
Sure.
Is there a difference in taste when they're both chilled between what I'm tasting out of the can versus what I'm tasting out of the bottle?
I have two quick answers for you, Joe, and they're both yes. There is a difference in taste. Largely, when you put beer into a can, it helps to eliminate light and oxygen, which can actually skunk beer, not help, but actually hurt the beer. When you have it in a bomber, or which these bigger bottles are called, light can still get through the pre-treated glass, and it can also seep in through the cap. So I would say cans are better for transporting and making sure that the freshness of the product stays. However, most people don't like the taste of tin to their lips. Just pour it into a glass.
I like the nerdiness, man.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much.
Always a pleasure. Smarty Pints, Mr. Jay Schreiber. And that is a wrap for BC Brew on Tap on Shaw TV from Mahoney & Sons at Canada Place. We always ask you enjoy what all the BC has to offer, but please plan a safe ride home and drink responsibly. We'll see you next time.
Clothing for Joe Leary and BC Brew on Tap supplied by Red Dragon Apparel, reddragonapparel.com. For BC Brew on Tap, this is Mike Schaefer.